All right, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are on an away game today. We are going to have some fun because we are at the Raymond Vineyards at the Jean-Charles Boisset collection. And we're here with Thane Knutson, the winemaker. Wine Talks is available at Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, your favorite podcast hangouts, and always sponsored by the Original Wine of the Month Club. But I want to get into winemaking with Thane because an unusual trek. And I think a passion for the grape. And that's kind of what it starts with, right? But this young gentleman started making wine in Oklahoma and his dorm room.
Where all grapes come from, right?
Where all the great grapes come from. Everybody knows this, right? So you were saying that you were making wine in your dorm room. And when I went to college, they weren't making wine in their closet. They were making, they were growing stuff. But so tell me about that. Like, why would you even do that?
Right? It was totally out of motivation. There was a need for access to affordable wine as a freshman in college, and found an outlet. We actually found where you could get varietal grape juice stabilized for home winemaking, and you could bring it in. You actually finesse it a little bit as far as the sugars go, and then you find your yeast and you pitch the yeast and watch this thing that you've purchased transform into what we drink and what we love as a bottle of wine. Was really, really eye-opening. I thought it was just hugely motivating to learn more and dive more into the art of fermentation and learn really what's happening there and how you can make it even more.
Did you have, you probably didn't need a refractometer, right? But you needed what's the alcohol?
Yeah, the hydrometer.
Did you have
Old
one of those?
School, right? Yep.
And
so
the little
you
thing
can
in
check
the
your
glass?
bricks
Yeah.
and kind of project where your alcohol is going to be and learn a little bit about your base before you start the fermentation.
And you had a roommate here.
And had a roommate. Happy roommates. Well, after it was made, they were very happy.
Yeah. So
sacrificing the
tell me about
closet.
The wine. Now you've done this for a long time and you've tasted wines from barrels and you've tasted different plots from different parts of Napa Valley. How was the wine then?
Then I only remember it as it was then, and then I was just thrilled.
You're thrilled.
It was awesome.
So this is your aha moment for the wine business.
Yeah.
This is where you thought, okay, because my daughter's a baker and she's in New York. She's Paris trained, the whole thing. And that fermentation science to her is a fabulous subject. Is that what turned you on to it? It was just like, wow, I converted this thing from grape juice to a palatable beverage, and my friends are lining up the door for it.
It's creation, right? Like being able to take something and call it your own is just awesome. Like taking one material, be it beer, be it wine, whatever it is, and turning it into something else. It is
That's
really the boss is peeking in here, but actually following that process to its end and having it be your own was just I couldn't. It was addictive. I couldn't stop.
So you're making not only the Raymond wines, you're making the 1881.
It's very hard to wear one hat when Jean-Charles comes in, right? as you can see. So
how many
there's
1881s are there?
Whole family here, but 1881. The one and only. So as you're coming up Napa Valley on Highway 29, you hit Oakville, really like the beginning of wine country, and there's millions of people going by there annually. And what do you see? You see Oakville Grocery, like the longest, longest continually operating grocer on the West Coast. It's really been the meeting point of the valley for a century, and so with Oakville Grocery, Frederick Durant and the Booth brothers actually finished the Victorian just next door to it, which had been a tasting room on and off throughout the years. But when we came in and kind of revived it a bit, we decided, what better place to tell the story of Napa and the settling of the sub-appellations, who came out there, our forefathers, why they settled in the areas they did, what they grew, what makes those areas unique, and really being able to take someone fresh off the boat into Napa Valley and really dive down into that and show people side by side the differences. Coming from Oklahoma, everyone feels the weather, the pain of the weather all the way through Oklahoma. everyone's feeling
You feel
it,
like the Lewis and Clark, right?
Yeah. Everyone's experiencing the same thing. So there's total disbelief when they come to the valley and they say, you could throw a stone over there and you're going to end up with something different if you grow wine there.
Isn't that amazing?
It's
so
incredibly eye-opening.
I want to actually touch on that. You must have family in Oklahoma, or they've all moved to Napa, one of the two. So have you had visitors after you've been out here and they're just like their jaws drop as to what you're doing and what's happening?
Right. Everyone loves that I'm out here.
Of course. We'll go visit Thane out here.
We need to talk strict business with Thane and come out to Napa Valley.
Yeah. So this revival of the Oakville market is Jean Charles' thing. Is that
right?
Okay.
Right, and really opening that Victorian up as not only its own brand in 1881 and story of the westward movement, but really, I think if you come to any Boisset estate, you're going to see an intense investment in education, really learning about a place, and so you get to see historical implements, different things from winemaking throughout the centuries. Oops.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's all live TV. Don't worry about it.
It's all live.
That's why we have post-production.
There you go. You get lots of production experience here.
Right, it's great. Yeah, it makes it real. So
you get to go into Oakville grocery, get your food, and then you get to go learn a little bit about the valley.
Yeah.
You see, actually, they should have my photo on the wall as you go up the stairs about the westward movement and where I settled. But you learn about Charles Crew, right, the 10-gallon hat and everything.
Great.
But you get to learn about Charles Crew. You learn about Henry Crabb and settling in Oakville, and you really get to learn a little bit about the people. And then as you go upstairs, you'll see some of the implements that they use for making barrels, old like hand crank wine pumps, how they moved wine from tank to tank, which just sounds insanely exhausting. But
there's sort of two, I'm going to go check that out. I haven't seen it, but there seems to be two sort of histories of the Napa Valley, because you've got the pre-Prohibition, sort of the settlers. There was a lot of vegetables and fruits grown here.
And peaches and almonds and all that.
Fruit came, and then Prohibition came, and a lot of people went bust, and there's Sacramento. Yeah, we'll get that. But then we get to sort of the modern times. And I mentioned that the first American wine ever poured at the White House was Johnson poured for the Pakistani, oddly.
Mm-hmm.
He poured a Charles Krug like a 58 or something. But Eisenhower had poured for the Queen during lunch a Charles Krug as well. So there was obviously there was wine being made here. It's sort of, let's call it the more contemporary times.
Mm-hmm.
But then we had the Judgment of Paris. And that
really put it on the map, right?
Changed everything, right? So everybody they wanted to come here.
Mm-hmm.
The prices weren't like $1 million an acre. So
no, it was new.
But the thing that's interesting, and it's kind of reflective of your own story, those guys were pioneers. None of them weren't even interested. Warren Winiarski knew nothing about wine, really. Jim Barrett totally knew nothing about wine. He was an attorney in Torrance.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this dream or this idea, this romance,
the romance of
making
wine
in the Napa Valley,
it's real. It's real, and I totally caught that bug. And you can just see it in people's eyes as they come out. There's year after year, we have new people come out and really crush. Right now is when a lot of people are coming out. They're brand new to the industry, and just the energy and excitement for learning this craft. It's tangible, it's palpable. You can really feel that with every person that comes out.
That's the fascination.
The gravity of it.
It's the fascination of it. Like I said, my brother-in-law made some wine. He couldn't help himself. He had cuttings from. And then we have another family member who planted, 12 rows, some Cab and some Merlot. And totally, they understand wine. They like wine. They're trying to learn it. And he had it picked, had a custom crush guy come pick it and make it. They barrel age a little bit.
Right.
And the wine's actually palatable. I put it around $15 retail if I was to compare it. Well made.
There you go.
Whoever made it well.
It's marketable.
But it's a shrine. It's a shrine at their house. They got the bottles on the wall, and they're handing it out. And it got to the point, he only made like 7 or 8 cases. It got to the point where he called me the other day, and he says, you might be listening, but I already told him this, so it's not news to him. He goes, can you get me some grapes? I'm like, why? He goes, well, I need to crush some more. I go, but that's not your wine anymore, right? It's not from your hidden hill. He goes,
right?
Oh, that makes sense. I said, I can get you some shiners and you can put your label on, but you're still not going to get to the point. If you're handing your bottle of wine to your friends to say, this is my vineyard, you're not doing that anymore.
This is my
right?
creation, right?
Right. I grew this.
Right. It's like a chef, you know?
Goes, yeah, you're right. I guess you're right.
It's like a chef. You make something and you want to share your creation with somebody.
That's right. So tell me about these 3 1881s. And I have one. I know it's Napa Cab. I don't know where it lines in this dimension.
In front of us, what we tasted.
2 different wines completely we're looking at, right? We're looking at Spring Mountain, which is
Spring Mountain, which is a sub-appellation throughout Napa Valley, mountain vineyard. So it's very site specific. And then after you go through all the AVAs and really learn about the components, essentially the spice rack of the winemaker, you get to go to the 1881 Napa Cab, which is what we see is really that ubiquitous something that really identifies. You taste it, you're like, this is Napa.
Right, that's what it tastes like.
You get to put together a number of vineyards that balance everything out and give you that perfect harmony for a Napa Cabernet. So Valley Floor fruit coming from Oak Knoll, a lot of Oak Knoll, and actually east side, hillside Napa.
Really? Okay.
Giving a lot of the structure to it
backbone.
and a little bit of up valley fruit, like right on the estate here, goes into this to give it more of the aromatic characters.
What a great compare and contrast, though, because they're totally different wines. The same grape.
Right.
Same general region. You could have put Napa on the Spring Mountain. It would have been this. No one would know the difference, except that you taste it. You go, wait a minute, these are different wines. So the one that I have, which is the darker label, there it is. Yeah,
So
you're pretty good at this, Senator. So I have
what you might see on the shelf is the 1881 Napa Cab.
This one.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So what's that made of?
So that one is very unique and first of its kind for the Boisset family as well. I always tell Jean-Charles he needs to put his earmuffs on for what we're about to discuss with it. Because traditionally everything's French oak, right? French oak is considered the standard for most.
It's more feminine, it's softer.
Right? For most wines. But what really lends it its character is American oak. So a total departure. It's all American oak, only American oak.
The Frenchman bought American oak. That's
oops. We'll never tell Jean-Charles.
Yeah, we'll say it. Yeah. He won't listen to this. So that's the one that's got American oak in it.
Right.
It's all American oak, new
and
American
oak has been somewhat dragged through the mud for a few decades. Opulent, there's a couple places in Napa Valley that identify as using American oak. But it totally has a telltale character that's been that way for years. But Coopers they've come a long way in how they choose the trees, how they pick, season, toast that oak, and how they tailored a product that's more appropriate for our Cabernets. And
instead of just flavoring, which almost American almost flavors a wine rather than, elevates a wine.
Right. It doesn't complement.
Right. Yeah. It sometimes fights with it. Right.
Yeah.
So do you have any gleanings toward Hungarian oak? Caucasus now, they're bringing oak from Slovenia.
Right. The whole Eurasia continent really has largely one species of oak.
Yes.
And so you're really diving down into the appellations of oak.
Wow, what an interesting. Now wait a minute. You want wine geeky, right?
Right.
Well, this is the.
So there's some Chardonnays out there made with Russian oak. There's a lot of Hungarian or Turkish oak out there.
Yeah, Turkish oak I've heard of.
That is
Hungarian
great and adds a certain spice. A lot of it's grown on hard pan, so the trees grow much slower and are a lot more dense.
So as a winemaker, when you consider
tight
these
grain,
things, yeah, right. It's the grain tightness.
That's where you get it from.
So as a winemaker, and you're crafting this thing, and as many people have put it to me, well, I feel like I'm the chef, and I'm it's a little different that you're just influencing what this, exaggerating what this wine can be, what the best this grape from this area can do.
Right.
And so we don't want to flavor it, mask it, develop flavors in there that weren't meant to be there in the first place.
Right.
It's kind of like the definition of natural, which doesn't even exist in the world of food. We have natural. It says natural on your bag of bagels. It doesn't exist. But the definition is, well, we expect that that only contains stuff that should be there in the first place, right?
Right.
So when we're making wine, you're sort of influencing the direction of the wine, but we're not necessarily flavoring it because I want it to be oaky or I want it to be grassy or
Trying to bring out the best.
maximize what you've been given. Right?
Like
So
like having children, right? Your grapes are your babies, and you're raising them into this bottle of wine. So you want to accentuate the best parts of those grapes.
So you're sitting, you've vinted the grapes, you've fermented them, and now we're going to put them in barrel. Mm-hmm. And I suppose you got to order these barrels ahead of time because they're really expensive, and you need to have enough at 60 gallons each or 66 gallons.
Yeah, you do that math; it adds up fast.
Yes, I'm sure. It's really fast. What's that? 25 cases a barrel? It's like, wait a minute, we made 15,000 cases.
Right.
But you have to order this barrel with toast, medium, light, or whatever the degrees are, and you have to make some assumptions as to what you're going to get out of this barrel, right? What do you think is going to happen to it, without completely screwing it up, which can happen, right?
Right. And every cooper has their own house toast.
Right.
It's just
the house toast.
That's how they label it, and so it really is unique to every cooper, and you put together essentially your own spice rack just with the oak and try and put together something that, as a family of options for the wine that you will have.
Right. So how do you personally look at the two wines you're in front of you? You've got the Spring Mountain and you've got the Napa, and you've fermented the grapes. Are you barrel selecting for the blend and doing something with the rest, or just you just
so on the sub-appellated, it is more of a barrel selection because oftentimes it will come out of a larger vineyard, and we're only doing about 25 to 50 cases of these, so very small.
Oh, very small,
right?
Wow.
Very small. So you're only talking 2 to 4 barrels maybe on
Are
the
they
very
small
high
because
end.
that's the purpose, or you're still sort of deciding what you want to do with it?
No, the rest of that will cascade into either this Napa cab or other blends, be components of a different blend.
Okay, so it's barrel select for that particular bottling under that label. And
so there's two ways that you can use oak. You can either use it to, as you say, change the wine, or in that case, rescue it from maybe a lesser wine. You add oak and you just cover up whatever was there.
Right. Yeah.
We'll fix it. We'll just add oak. Just throw it at. But how I envision using oak is much more as an accompaniment to the wine. So you want, for a strong wine, it can handle more oak because you don't want it to overpower it, right? But if it has a lot of base character to it, a lot of flavor, a lot of aromatics, it can hang with the oak.
Because the for a long time, and we haven't tasted any Chardonnays here, but for a long time, I'm going to say with the 90s, the California style of Chard was this, really just chewing on popsicles type Chardonnays. Rombauer is still popular because people, I don't know why they like it, but Chardonnay's got a real grape. It's a real grape with real character that you could actually make some wines that taste like Chardonnay. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering with the reds if we're experiencing that as well. I have seen some completely unoaked Napa cabs lately, and they're kind of interesting.
You got to have a counter movement, right?
Yes, right. That has to happen.
It's going to happen sometime.
Or they're just cheap and they don't want to spend money on barrels. I don't know.
Or that. But there's a real. Everyone can add oak. Anyone can add oak.
Yes.
It's not like that's a specialty, but not everyone can do essentially a naked wine that does not have that as a cover-up for the underlying wine.
Well, okay, so that's a good point. It's a really valid point. The advent of chips, I think there's even, liquid additives, right? I mean, you can put a couple of drops of the stuff you buy from the market to smoke your meats, right?
It's
liquid smoke.
Extracted oak.
And so that is necessarily trying to influence the flavor of the wine to most likely, and I detect this all the time because I taste a lot of crap. Acidulation, sugar content, oak chips, drizzles, who knows? But you typically can tell.
Right?
You typically can tell that this has been mocked up.
It's just amazing how much your palate can identify.
Yes.
And just the finesse of tasting something. You can tell if it's been put together, if it's a fake creation, it's
Mega
amazing.
red.
Right?
So one day, and I think I've told the story before on the podcast, but there's I don't know if you know the birth of wine in California is in Rancho Cucamonga. It's in Southern California. It's in the 1700s. There's a great book called Tangled Vines by Frances Deaconspiel. She lives in San Francisco. She tells a story about arson, murder, and
intrigue.
theft, intrigue
Yeah.
in the wine business. This is a great story. It is true. But her family had something to do with those days in Cucamonga. Anyway, there's still a vineyard out there. It's called Galliano. The guy's a friend of mine. He doesn't do it for a living anymore. He's got so much acreage. But one day I was there, and he barrel thieved out of some Zin. It was only about a year into the barrel, so it should have been fine. But it was orange. It was burnt orange.
Oh.
But the character was fresh. It's just the color had prematurely aged. And who knows? It's Cucamonga grapes. He goes, we can fix that.
Wow.
And he goes into the lab. He opens this old refrigerator. There's a bottle of Mega Red in there, Mega Purple, whatever it's called. He takes a drop, puts it in my glass, and bing, the whole thing changes.
Chemistry.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I was like, this is great. I go, look, I can't do that knowingly. Now, if you put it in, I don't know it. That's one thing. But I know now.
Yeah.
I really don't want to. And I'm sure I've sold wines like that have happened. It's probably beyond my control to know. But when I knew, I felt okay. And there's 75 or 100 things that the California law allows, or the federal law allows you to put into a wine.
Oh, there's so much red tape.
Yeah.
And we were talking about earlier about this is only the beginning for identifying where fruit comes from, like East Side Oakville, West Side Oakville. This is only the beginning for what is considered normal or standardized or restricted for winemaking.
Yes.
It's still, we're still a young country, still a young wine industry here in Napa. You have room for creativity, but a lot of that will get restricted with time.
What do you think's happening? At Jean-Charles' hometown, global, the climate change has affected greatly the vineyards of Burgundy and how they're going to respond. Even in Bordeaux, they're going to start allowing interesting grapes in a regular appellated Bordeaux. I mean, it's not going to be in Pauillac or places like that, but they're going to allow, I think, Touriga Nacional is going to be
You got to watch your language.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, right?
Who knows?
And that's in an effort to augment, the effects of climate change. And so Burgundy seems to be getting the brunt of it now. Have you seen anything here in your career that would suggest that something needs to change in the winemaking philosophy or the grape growing that might be related to temperature change?
The big question for California, there's fires from LA all the way to Oregon right now.
Yes.
And there is entire industries built on essentially smoke tainted beverages like mezcal or scotch or other things that
that's a really interesting point.
that have a purpose, but in the wine industry that's considered faux pas. That's not that we don't do that. And not everyone is fortunate to be outside of that influence of climate change and fires and things like that. In the future, more than regulation, I think there'll be new flavors that are considered norm.
Okay, yeah. I taste a lot of smoke taint. The stuff from, I can't remember what year it was, 14 or 4, Mendocino had a fire. Sonoma had a couple fires, and there were some smoke-tainted wines that came out of that. And,
right.
Almost tastes like, I guess it almost tastes like they overcharred the barrel when they, aged it.
Sure.
I interviewed, go ahead.
But climate change is changing that,
It's
right?
changing that
It's
right now.
becoming
It
more
could be.
normal, and there's going to be things hit the market. Some people are going to make a push, I believe, for normalizing that.
I wonder if the public understands the value of that. Not just I'm talking about smoke taint and the fact that the climate's changing and it's hotter or whatever. Speaking with a winemaker in the valley here, he grew up in Gilroy, and I okay,
Yep.
and I kind of surprised him when I brought it. It was Mike Salacci from Opus, and I kind of surprised him. I said, "You're a Gilroy Mustang." You know, that's a high school he went to. He goes, yeah. He goes, I grew up on a farm. It smelled like horse shit and garlic. But
The capital.
yeah, exactly. But I remember it was Clos Lachance or some other Gilroy-based adjacent to Gilroy wines. And there were a couple of wines that definitely were tainted a bit by the garlic character. And he says that didn't happen. But I know I tasted it. And it's not unlike the wines from Sicily. You know, some of the white wines from Sicily are clearly not salted, but they carry that Mediterranean.
There's an
offshore.
umami, right? There's a salinity to
It
it.
has to happen, and I think it's fabulous. It's a fabulous character in those wines, and it makes those wines, right?
It's amazing how wine is just a bioaccumulator
Yes,
of its environment.
right.
It just pulls up
That's a
so
great
much
term.
from its surrounding area. We were just talking about Spring Mountain, and you can just look at the hillside and get a sense of what is going into that fruit.
Yes.
You see those trees around it, and you can taste some of that sappy texture and more resinous character coming out of this hillside fruit. It's just amazing how wine can draw up so much of that place.
I think it's a great example just looking at us right now between these two wines. So tell me what's next. What's the? I don't want to push the button of Jean Charget.
Oh, we have to.
Thanks.
We'll do that.
Well, I recorded it earlier.
There we go.
Not your career, but what's next in sort of the next step of experimentation? Is it varietal experimentation? Is it aging experimentation? One of the things that was kind of funny yesterday, we interviewed a couple that's making Burgundian varietals at the Petaluma Gap. He goes, I made my first wine and I made a Riesling and I put it in the refrigerator for 5 years.
Well,
I'm like, who would hang on to the Riesling for 5 years? But do you have things you want to test, try, blend, varietals you want to experiment with? Are there small plots of varietals here that you're just cultivating to see what happens? Or
God knows where the industry will be
I
in
guess with him
10
around.
years.
Yeah.
Who knows? But maybe a bit of a tangent, but in the vineyard is really where a lot of innovation is happening.
Yes.
How we tend the soils. We talked about organic and biodynamic and that whole movement, the concept of sustainability in the vineyard. It starts in the vineyard.
Yeah.
So much is on the land, exposed, and can really be affected by how we choose to treat the land. And I think that's going to be the biggest environmental change, flavor change. The biggest evolution in the wine industry is really going to start
these
in the
are
vineyard.
all everything's organic right now and biodynamic.
Right.
Okay. And I don't know about this is 20. Are we to 2020?
2020. It's tough.
I mean, there haven't been any bad years in the last, in California, though we ordered a wine from the press the other night out of 2014, and I made a comment to, I don't know if you know Josh Phelps, the Grounded Wine Company. His father worked at Petrus. They were sitting next to us by accident. And I said, this wine is lacking a little acid. He goes, what are you talking about? That was a very acidic year. I'm like, well, this particular bottling is not very acidic. Okay. What's happening in 2020 for the harvest, because it's got to be happening very soon. You already picked one.
We picked our Sauv Blanc lot already.
Okay, so when do you expect to harvest the reds, and what are you thinking is happening with this vintage?
Well, currently there's a lot of heat. So
It's hot right now. It's 105.
so you're watching a lot of vines race towards the finish line,
Yeah.
but people always come to the winemaker and go, so how's harvest looking? And
Yeah.
they'll start in March. And it's like, who knows until the day before, right?
Well,
You
in
can
March,
have
the
everything be perfect up until the day before.
That's true. Because in March it was flooded around here. We were here.
Yeah.
Was it March or May?
That was last year.
It was last year?
We were here in February.
You're kidding. Oh, well. One of these years we were here and there was, the streets were flooded. And so everybody, the question then was, what happens to the vines? And I said, well, they're dormant. Nobody cares at this point, right?
Right.
But it
They
matters.
they can take a lot, and
So
they can experience
you
a
can't
lot.
really say, because it comes down to the day you pick, right?
The day you pick. So I'll go out in the vineyard the day before and taste to make sure that, sure, you can run numbers, but that doesn't really tell you what's going on in that place and the flavors that you're going to get out of the
Right,
vineyard.
sure.
So you go out and you make sure that it's good to pick before they pick a few hours into the night.
How is it with yield then right now?
Oh, it's going to be a good year.
Is it?
It'll be right on for a Napa harvest.
I think last year was it what, $8,000 a ton or $5,000 a ton or some crazy number?
Dollars will be a totally different animal
Yeah, right.
based
That's
on
how- you don't care
how it
about
shakes
that.
out.
Yeah.
The winemakers have we get the benefit of being able to just deal with the fruit.
Now, do you guys, this is a question I get a lot. In fact, I've had people say, hey, can you get me some of the extra production at Screaming Eagle? I'm like, no. Because who
Just
knows
skim
where it
a
ends
little
up.
off the top.
What are you talking
No one
about?
will notice.
But you may predict more than you want to produce. I mean,
Right.
so do you sell the grapes? Do you sell the juice? Do you sell the...
We are a large
You blend it off.
family,
Yes. Move it
and we
around.
do innovative, crazy things. Like we have JCB number 3 is a
Mm-hmm.
blending of Pinot from his hometown and Russian River. I
Come
mean,
on.
unheard
Clos
of,
Vougeot,
unheard of things,
two totally different styles.
right? But coming up with innovative, creative, new things to try,
Yeah.
it's what makes working at Raymond so exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. This is a fun place. I'm really so happy we had a chance to do this because I've never seen it. My recollection of Raymond is the two guys stand behind the bar, the tasting thing at the Southern Wine and Spirits or Wine Warehouse or whatever it was.
Right.
And knowing the wines were great, but this has been a very fascinating conversation to have with you, and so interesting to follow and see a career, particularly from the Midwest, where this bug bit you and got you here and got you in a very good place.
Swept me out here.
And it must be a testimony to your talent and your persistence and your passion to do it right. And I don't think you could work for a gentleman like Jean Charles without
more passionate,
without
right?
that, right?
Right.
It's a fascinating thing. Thane,
This
it's
has
been a
been
pleasure
good.
meeting you, and good luck for this vintage. And we're going to be looking at this Spring Mountain. I kind of want to bring that to my own cellar.
Absolutely.
Is it possible?
Absolutely.
I think people will get jealous of us when they, particularly your friend Gina, will say,
See some 1881 on your shelves.
Yeah, the
Well,
1881.
yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's so fun to talk about these wines.
"It's my pleasure, and I hope to see you soon. We're going to do it again, I hope."
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Till next time.
Thank you.